Hi again. I'm looking at Anti-Intellectualism in American Life by Richard Hofstadter, published during the Kennedy era, an era of general optimism, but reacting to the 1950s, which Hofstadter and many intellectuals looked at as a dark period in the history of the United States, and I think we do now, generally, but maybe not for the same reasons that Hofstadter did. He thought it was the dearth of intellectual life that was causing the moral chaos of the McCarthy era. Now, he talks about the assumptions of anti-intellectualism this way. This is on page 19 of his first chapter, the intro, Anti-Intellectualism in Our Time. He says, intellectuals, it may be held, that is by anti-intellectuals, are pretentious, conceited, effeminate, and snobbish, and very likely immoral, dangerous, and subversive. The plain sense of the common man, especially if tested by success in some demanding line of practical work, is an altogether adequate substitute for, if not actually much superior to, formal knowledge and expertise acquired in the schools. Not surprisingly, institutions in which intellectuals tend to be influential, like universities and colleges, are rotten to the core. In any case, the discipline of the heart and the old-fashioned principles of religion and morality are more reliable guides to life than an education which aims to produce minds responsive to new trends in thought and art. Even at the level of elementary education, a schooling that puts too much stress on the acquisition of mere knowledge as opposed to the vigorous development of physical and emotional life is heartless in its mode of conduct and threatens to produce social decadence. Well, that's his summary of the anti-intellectual attitude. And then he goes on to what he considers to be a moderate view of intellectual life. So here's what Hofstadter comments on the general anti-intellectual trend that he saw. He says, to avoid some hazards of understanding, it is perhaps necessary to say that a work given single-mindedly to the exploration of such a theme as this must inevitably have the effect of highlighting its importance in a way that would not be warranted in a comprehensive history of American culture. I can only say that I do not suffer from the delusion that the complexities of American history can be satisfactorily reduced to a running battle between the eggheads and the fatheads. Moreover, to the extent that our history can be considered one of cultural and intellectual conflicts, the public is not simply divided into intellectual and anti-intellectual factions. The greater part of the public, and a great part even of the intelligent and alert public, is simply non-intellectual. It is infused with enough ambivalence about intellect and intellectuals to be swayed now this way and now that on current cultural issues. It has an ingrained distrust of eggheads, but also a genuine yearning for enlightenment and culture. Possibly the greatest hazard of this venture is that of encouraging the notion that anti-intellectualism is commonly found in a pure or unmixed state. It seems clear that those who have some quarrel with intellect are almost always ambivalent about it. They mix respect and awe with suspicion and resentment. And this has been true in many societies and phases of human history. In any case, anti-intellectualism is not the creation of people who are categorically hostile to ideas. Quite the contrary, just as the most effective enemy of the educated man may be the half-educated man, so the leading anti-intellectuals are usually men deeply engaged with ideas, often obsessively engaged with this or that outworn or rejected idea. Few intellectuals are without moments of anti-intellectualism, few anti-intellectuals without single-minded intellectual passions. Insofar as anti-intellectualism becomes articulate enough to be traced historically, or widespread enough to make itself felt in contemporary controversy, it has to have spokesmen who are, at least to some degree, competent. These spokesmen are in the main neither the educated nor the unintellectual, neither the uneducated nor the unintellectual, but rather the marginal intellectuals, would-be intellectuals, unfrocked or embittered intellectuals, the literate leaders of the semi-literate, full of seriousness and high purpose about the causes that bring them to the attention of the world. I have found anti-intellectual leaders who were evangelical ministers, many of them highly intelligent, and some even learned, fundamentalists articulate about their theology, politicians, including some of the shrewdest, businessmen or other spokesmen of the practical demands of American culture, right-wing editors of strong intellectual pretensions and convictions, various marginal writers such as the beatniks, anti-communist pundits offended by the past heresies of a large segment of the intellectual community, and for that matter, communist leaders who had much use for intellectuals when they could use them, but the utmost contempt for what intellectuals are concerned with. The hostility so prominent in the temper of these men is not directed against ideas as such, not even in every case against intellectuals as such. The spokesmen of anti-intellectualism are almost always devoted to some ideas, and much as they may hate the regnant intellectuals among their living contemporaries, they may be devotees of some intellectuals long dead, Adam Smith perhaps, or Thomas Aquinas, or John Calvin, or even Karl Marx. Then he concludes his introduction chapter with this paragraph. It first got its strong grip on our ways of thinking because it was fostered by an evangelical religion that also pervade many humane and democratic sentiments. It made its way into our politics because it became associated with our passion for equality. It has become formidable in our education partly because our educational beliefs are evangelically egalitarian. Hence, as far as possible, our anti-intellectualism must be excised from the benevolent impulses upon which it lives by constant and delicate acts of intellectual surgery, which spare these impulses themselves. Only in this way can anti-intellectualism be checked and contained. I do not say eliminated altogether, for I believe not only that this is beyond our powers, but also that an unbridled passion for the total elimination of this or that evil can be as dangerous as any of the delusions of our time.